All right, here we go. Welcome to the future of fitness. I want to extract information to get value from our audience.
How much time do you have on this flight?
It's always an interesting question to me.
I research fixing people's metabolism.
Hormone replacement and optimization.
I call it being 40 years lucky. And then all of a sudden you start looking at something a little bit different. The coolest thing is I still wake up every morning and want to keep innovating and shaping the future. I mean, it takes you down a whole new path of, hey, here's where we could go with something.
Your energy is undeniable. Start with GLP-1s. What is it that we don't know yet about GLP-1s from your research?
You haven't looked at your gut health. You're stressed out. Protein is probably the number one thing. Individualization of dosing is kind of the next generation that's coming with GLP-1s. But the thing is that realizing their benefit is problematic. Different when you're giving it to people that are healthy. Dosing takes for people that are basically well versus people that are ill are two different things.
I'm hearing this right. It's a corrective measure.
Well, look, here's the biggest thing.
All right, here we go. Jim, welcome to the future of fitness, man.
I'm happy to be back to the future.
It's I got to spend some time with you last night. We're here at the Connected Health and Fitness in Los Angeles. Yeah. We're doing this in person.
Right.
Yeah, I got to ask you some questions, and Jeff Sweefel, thank him for making the formal introduction.
Right.
But this is a real treat for me, man. I've been around the industry for 17 years, and you are on kind of the Mount Rushmore of our industry in so many ways. You've done a lot. I'm not going to get into your history and your background because there's so many things that are really relevant to today's world that I want to extract information to get value from our audience. But
sure.
Maybe let's start with this. This is always an interesting question to me. If, let's say, you sat down on a plane, right? I would imagine it's business class, but you don't have to answer that. I hope it is. And someone asks you, like, hey, what do you do for a living? What do you tell them?
I said, how much time do you have on this flight? First of all, I typically tell people, my primary thing is I research fixing people's metabolism.
Okay.
And then everything flows around that, right? So whether it's, assessing labs or whether it's looking at nutrients or peptides or bioidentical hormones but it's really in the end, I have this never-ending passion for, I assess metabolic function for human beings. I haven't done many, frogs or anything. I mean, but human beings, I've done quite a bit, and I have this just research desire to figure out how do I create the best possible outcome for someone's health, and that takes into account a lot of different categories. Whether it's technology on like peptides or small molecules, is it training, exercise, the value of good diet, like all these pieces are all a piece of kind of who I am.
Yeah. It must be a very exciting time for you right now because there's a lot, personalization, preventative health, like all the buzzwords that go into just this new model that's being created due to so many different factors, right?
Yep.
The consumer demand, consumers are more knowledgeable than they've ever been, right?
Yes. Without a doubt.
The science is, the ability, the quantified self is stronger than ever.
That's right.
We got peptides, we got, hormone replacement and optimization has become mainstream. You're getting all these factors, longevity, whatever that category is, everyone defines it differently. So it's a lot. Right. It must be very exciting for you right now because you've been working on this stuff for a long time and you have an opportunity now to kind of help get us into this next phase of whatever it is. So how are you feeling about things?
I call it being 40 years lucky. When I started at this literally in the mid 80s, right? People looked at me like, what are you talking about? And it's incredibly exciting now. And it's exciting. I have to be honest. It's exciting because after over 4 decades in it, like getting some recognition and people coming up to me and saying, hey, you changed, the way I practice medicine, or hey, I remember the programs you did at Lifetime, or all that is, it feels good. It really does feel good. The coolest thing is I still wake up every morning and want to keep innovating and shaping the future. I have this insatiable just thirst for it, man. I don't even know how to put it. Maybe maybe I need medicated. I'm not quite sure. But honestly, I really just get up and just like today, being here today and talking to people and getting their perspective. And then all of a sudden you start looking at something a little bit different, and it takes you down a whole new path of, hey, here's where we could go with something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's, your energy is undeniable. Like we sit here even at dinner last night when there's no cameras or recorders or anything. I'm like, I could just sense like you're having a great time.
Oh yeah.
Like you're having a lot of fun. And, so some of the things, there's many things I want to ask you questions about. I mean, this could easily be one of those like 5-hour Sean Ryan show podcasts, but we just don't have that amount of time. Let's start with GLP-1s.
Sure.
Right. That's, I was here last year at this event, the GLP-1 panel. You were just on one. Last year was the most attended. I was in the room this year for the one you were at. I think it was very highly attended compared to some of the other ones, which means that people are, what's going on, and the stats keep changing, right? There's 1 in 8 Americans.
Right.
The introduction of Wegovy's pill is going to change a lot of different things. So give us your take right now on, where are GLP-1s, like if we're in this hockey stick acceleration of this medication.
Right.
How do you feel about it personally? Do you think it's good, bad, indifferent? And then how, what is it that we don't know yet about GLP-1s from your research?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is I think they're tremendous. It's literally a seismic shift in how we can work with someone's metabolism in order to correct a lot of things that happen either because of stress or their diet or their overtraining or undertraining, environmental burden. There's all kinds of reasons why we start to see problems in glucose regulation. And I think they're fantastic, but there's a big but. I mean, honestly, one is there are people that it is not their answer. Either they don't tolerate it or that it's not what's working for them. So we have to keep that in mind. The other one is that people that use it and think, hey, all I have to do is take this injection and I'm going to lose weight. To me, that's dangerous. In fact, that without proper information on how should I eat, how should I be exercising, am I managing my stress, basic things like, are you taking fiber while you're doing it? Are you on magnesium while you're doing it? Are you getting enough protein is probably the number one thing. And what are your strategies to get that? So if you don't do them correctly, and I really am passionate about teaching people how to titrate their doses. It's how I teach people in the certification course at American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, and it's how I did it at Neora at Lifetime, is titrate the dose, get to where you're losing a couple pounds a week. That way you can get, when it's time to come off, the receptors aren't so dependent on that massive injection, the highest dose right away, right?
Because that's what most do, right? If you get a prescription, they're just going to heavy dose you. Is that correct?
That's right. And that's, to me, the individualization of dosing is kind of the next generation that's coming with GLP-1s. And obviously we've got the new GLP-1s that are coming out, and small molecules like orforglipron. It's a small molecule. It's not a peptide. Behaves a lot like a peptide. They're related to GLP-1, but it's a different category. And then retatrutide is going to be the next big thing. I mean, obviously, I know it's going to be big because it was on Hugh Marin's podcast.
Right.
So.
Right.
But seriously, it's a big. It's so
300 million downloads. Yeah, it's going to be big.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So the thing is that GLP-1s are one piece of the puzzle to performance health and really creating a great health span for yourself. And putting too much emphasis on it, I think, is problematic, and not realizing their benefit is problematic. And I think the thing we're not recognizing yet, and I don't think we know enough about it, is, they've been out for 30 years. We know how they work in type 2 diabetics. It's been a drug, a staple for a long time.
Right.
But it's different when you're giving it to people that are healthy. They're just overweight. And so how is that going to change? And I'll give you a good example. Metformin for type 2 diabetes. Then everybody started talking about, there's a big book that came out, Metformin for longevity. It's amazing. Well, then they found out people that don't have diabetes that take it, end up having trouble putting muscle on, and they get a little catabolic. And so dosing takes for people that are basically well versus people that are ill are two different things. And we have to understand that.
Well, do you follow this whole thing with Jelly Roll?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
His story, amazing. 300 pounds he lost. He went from 500 to under 200. And metformin was like a big part of that. So you hear these stories too, and everyone wants to rush. This is just human behavior. Like, well, I want that. Give me what that guy has.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing, right now is like, obviously, GLP-1 as a category is everyone just thinks, well, I'm going to lose weight. It's going to help me lose weight fast. But I don't think really people understand like the underlying, like how does it actually affect metabolism? And like, there's a lot of different things I keep hearing, and I don't study the science like you do, obviously, but like, different forms of addiction and other things. Like there's a lot of other benefits, but also I'm sure a lot of other things that we're not seeing that are detrimental to one's health. So maybe explain it to me like I'm a senior in high school.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, look, here's the biggest thing. So mitochondrial health, like everybody's talking about the mitochondria, right? The powerhouses of your cells, keeping those healthy. That's a big feature of what they're finding out that the GLP-1s do. So if you think about it, when you have insulin resistance or you are a person with diabetes, you have something called metabolic inflammation. So metaflammation leads to inflammaging or inflammatory aging. So why would a GLP-1 help somebody reduce their risk of Alzheimer's? Well, it's because you reduce when you reduce and this is my working through it clinically, right? It's not like it has a bunch of different buttons that it pushes and, hey, it works on your brain and, hey, it works on your kidneys. There's all these different buttons. It's really a central theme of when you reduce insulin resistance. You're not pumping out too much insulin. Your blood sugars are good in your bloodstream. When you're insulin resistant, you create a lot of inflammatory compounds like something called lipopolysaccharide. Like, so people with insulin resistant have a lot of that in their bloodstream, gets into their brain, triggers inflammation, and now there's dementia at risk. So is it true that it shuts down some of the inflammatory signaling in the brain? Well, sure it is. And is it true that you're reducing insulin resistance? Yes. And is it true that the reward center, it is one of the areas that it triggers in the brain, is like the nutrient sensing part, the food noise, it does have an impact on that area, so your hunger goes down. But when I explain it to people, it's like at the center of this is the fact that you are insulin resistant. Now you can't access your fat. And when you can't access your fat stores to burn them, you start collecting a lot of visceral fat. And now that visceral fat is making all kinds of inflammatory compounds that get released into your body.
Oh, interesting.
So when you think about, I like to think of GLP-1s as like that lifeline. It's a lifeline to get your metabolism back on track, to stop making so many signals, from different systems of the body that are leading you down a chronic illness path. So now you're erasing those signals, getting your body back in that homeostasis. Here's where the conundrum is. People go off of them, and if they haven't corrected their sex hormones, say you're a 60-year-old female and you're low in estradiol, of course you are. But we know that has an important part to role in your health as you're aging as a woman. But if you haven't done that, you haven't looked at your gut health, you're stressed out, you're going to go off that GLP-1 and you're going to start gaining weight right back. And the problem is you've lost 30% of your weight or more in lean mass. And now you're going to get on it again. And you see that that's where it can be a real problem with long-term metabolic health if we're not telling people, hey, look, you need to, you got to manage. All these other issues should really be managed in order to take full advantage of what that lifeline called a GLP-1 just did for you.
So if I'm hearing this right, it's a corrective measure, right? It's like a reset mechanism, but it's not something that you're going to get on and be like, hey, I'm just doing this now for the rest of my life, because that's going to be detrimental in numerous ways.
If that's all you do,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. We've already seen it. We've already seen people where it stopped working, or they got off of it and they gained all their weight back. So it either boxes you in to having to take it the rest of your life, but then you don't necessarily optimize your health. You're just, there's a certain part of it is because you've gotten thinner, and now you have less fat to make inflammatory compounds coming out of your body. That's cool. But at the same time, it doesn't make everything like harmonized. Your body's a system of systems. You're only as strong as your weakest organ.
Right.
It's that simple. And if you don't respect that, I think it's simple. But I mean,
when you put it that way,
decades.
well, that's how you know if you can understand something. You can explain it simply, right?
Yeah, it's a system of systems. And hey, if my kidneys are weak, everything else can be great. But my kidneys are still weak.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I think I love what GLP-1s have done for people. It's given them hope. It's like really tangible results for them. But, unfortunately in America, and this is just the way it is, I've been around it. It's like, hey, if I can get a quick fix, man, I'm going to do a quick fix.
Oh, we love it.
Right?
We love
I want
it.
that quick fix.
We love it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the danger's at.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I guess the regulations around this is a really fascinating topic and extremely critical in how this whole thing plays out. I mean, so, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, it's a peptide. It's not a pharmaceutical, right? And this is what I've never been able to understand is like how large pharmaceutical companies can own this when it's a peptide, which is something that technically is not a pharmaceutical. Am I wrong in that? Or like, what am I missing there?
So peptides, if they're studied and you make you extract the peptide. So, you've got like 3 different GLP-1s right now, right? Mm-hmm. So they all look a little different. That unique signature, and then they put it through FDA approval as a drug, it becomes a drug. But peptides are basically a chain of amino acids that is smaller than protein. And there are a lot of peptides in your body, like glutathione. Glutathione is 8 amino acids, and that is a dietary supplement. But another peptide is, oh no, that's not a supplement. That is in the netherworld of, we can compound it, but it's not an FDA approved drug. It's very, I have to be honest with you. It's black and white, kind of, not really. Right?
That's the best description I've heard so far.
How can I say it? Because I went to the FDA hearings. Uh-huh. I actually testified at the FDA hearings.
Okay.
So I just turned in about 4,000 pages of research to be able to kind of look at the new ways the new legislation is going to work. So I donated a bunch of research. So I'm very bullish on we should be able to allow peptides to be utilized by people. Obviously, we had this issue of category 2 peptides, meaning the FDA said, oh no, all these peptides you've been using, all of a sudden they're not safe for human use.
BCP 157?
Yeah, which, right. Nobody's gotten hurt from BPC 157.
Right.
But, unsafe, take them over here. So then what happens? We get this spring up of research-only peptides, which it's interesting. I didn't realize so many people were researchers. It was crazy.
So I bought them.
All these labs that are out.
I'm a researcher. Did you know that?
Well, I could kind of tell by the questions. I thought you were a researcher.
Yeah.
Here it turns out I was right.
Yeah.
But so you've got
explain that to people.
Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah. So research peptides are research only is. They don't have to go through the scrutiny of for human use compounded pharmacy regulation. So there's a lot to when you're going to make something for pharmacy and you're going to inject it in a human being. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of steps and procedures you have to document to say the final product is safe. and it is what it says it is, and there's no impurities in it, and you can take it. Research peptides, none of that's necessary. Now, some people may do that voluntarily, but as we know, I mean, now we're having labs test them, and there's a wide variety of, hey, this had adulterants in it, this had toxins in it, this one didn't have the peptide in it, this had 70% of the peptide in it. And so research only is, not for human use, not for animal use. Oh, okay.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were an amphibian, so I was, it's like I got it now.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, I was just figuring
it's kind of
it all
weird.
out.
I don't share it. Yeah,
exactly. You don't share it much. But my point is, I think that set us back, and I think there was this spirit, compounding pharmacies when GLP-1s got popular, right? And Lilly and Novo run out. They had shortages. They ran out of stock. Compounding pharmacies saved that business because they were making it for the shortfall, and that's a beautiful thing. That's kind of the beauty of compounding pharmacy, right? They're there for you. But all of a sudden, when they could make enough, now all the negative chatter came out and said, "Oh, these things are, unregulated and not made well." It's like, well, wait a second. They were made well when they were saving you, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's this middle ground that has to happen, where the Department of Health and Human Services and the FDA give us clear guidance on what peptides are allowed. One, how they're allowed. They're going to have to be for human use and made in a pharmacy. Or maybe there's something that could be made orally and sold, but what's that category? Because it's not a dietary supplement and it's not a drug, right? Officially. So I think there's a lot of gray in it that I'm just hoping for clear guidance that, because people rely on these things. Like when a lot of the peptides were kind of taken out of category 2, through category 2, I mean, there are peptides that people were, relying on for their health. And I think that was, that's what kind of pushed people into, hey, if I got to get them somewhere, I'll get them, through research peptides, right?
Yeah.
So it's really complicated for me.
What would you, if you had the power to just, you had this magic wand, Jim, and you could be like, this is the way I want it moving forward. You could just dictate the regulations. You could usage, form of, injections versus, like, what would be ideal to you? What would you hope for in the best case scenario?
Well, I think drug companies should be, look, they spend all the money to do the research on them, right? So there's a certain amount of honoring that, that thought that they put all that research and time and money into it. And then I think compounding pharmacy, if they can create unique, differentiated products with that raw material that, just like the laws say, if you can have a unique application that you now can take that raw material and add something to it that creates added value that's not commercially available, fantastic. I think that there should be categories of peptides that are available, like, for example, bioregulators, right? Which in the past have been extracted from tissue of animals, right? You would take adrenal gland extract or liver or whatever. But why can't we just synthesize those now in a lab and make a pure one and be able to sell those still as a dietary supplement, right? Because but it's not coming from a food anymore, right? A gland. It's now it's being synthesized in a lab. So I would love to see more access orally. But on the injectables, I really think that injectables shouldn't be sold unless they pass the rigor of for human use. I really
That's fair.
And only because and this was the big argument when I was up FDA was when you inject something in your tissue, your immune system could react to it pretty dramatically. So if you're injecting something that's, impure, adulterated, or, we don't know what the immunogenicity is to it, that's, I think, kind of important. So there should be like maybe a minimum standard of studies that are published that would support the use of a peptide. And then it should be made to be safe, prescriptive, or over the counter. I don't think it's that much to ask.
Because I think a lot of people are drawn to these research only because of cost. I mean, majority of it, right? And accessibility and like a lot of things. Like it's really easy.
Well, why is it cost less? Because you don't have to spend
Why does it cost less?
Well, because you don't have to spend $100,000 on the front end with all the validation studies in order to get it to the point where you can say, here, I have my batch, and that's for my batch. Then every time I make it, I have to create other tests that are another 25 grand for every batch. So when you don't have to do that, the cost is less. And so that's the, I like my first degree was pharmacy. I'm a huge believer in the elegance of pharmacy practice and making things. And I just, you want to be able to ensure safety in the end. Safety is what counts.
Yeah. So when you go to these research only, what have you heard as far as like safety concerns? Like, you mentioned a couple of things, like it's only a certain percentage what you're getting. It doesn't have anything at all. It's got some toxins in it. Like anecdotally or real through research, like what are some of the real risks that you've heard that maybe should scare someone like an amphibian, right? Into saying like, hey, second think what you're doing.
Yeah, and once again, I know there's research companies that have, they go and they get independent testing and it looks good. The problem is that it's all over the place in terms of that. Some are, some aren't. And there's been, I was on a podcast, a big podcast, and we were talking about this. And, the host was saying, I had a couple of my friends going and buying research peps, and they really felt bad. I mean, they had, inflammation in their tissues, and, you could, like, because endotoxin's a big thing you're trying to filter out of injectables, because endotoxins do little things like cause heart attacks.
Yeah.
You could have life-threatening, effects. And like I said, I've got nothing against, like, I love peptides and I love people to have access to peptides. I just want them to be safe. Like, that's it. That's the number one thing. Be safe. Make sure, because they're not, you have to imagine you're taking, say for example, semaglutide.
Yeah.
500 micrograms. Tiny.
Yeah.
In a little tiny injection. And it has that kind of effect on your whole body for a week at a time.
It's wild.
It's not like you're taking a botanical or a supplement. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I think a lot of people,
they
don't understand that these are very powerful. You're injecting them into your body, and your immune system is going to see that, and your tissues see that. And so a lot of the people that are buying them and just using them on their own, and they're not doing lab tests, and they don't have any practitioner guidance, it's playing Russian roulette. I mean, for example, if you're buying the GLP-1s and you're not looking to see if you have pancreatitis, your liver enzymes elevated or not, and then you go to inject that. And I have heard that problem occur, right? So it's that thought of these very powerful things that by law, anything that's injectable is considered a dangerous drug. It could be B12. As soon as it's an injectable for human use,
as soon as it breaks the skin,
it's a dangerous drug.
Huh.
So now you're buying stuff that's it's breaking the skin, injectable.
Yeah.
But it's not going through any of the rigors of for human use.
Yeah.
I
would love to know what syringe sales look like on Amazon over the last 3 years.
I bet
they're doing pretty good.
I bet the syringe companies are loving that. I mean, and those are probably coming from another country too. It's like, are they sharp? Who knows? Is it an accurate number on that syringe? Like all that. But I remember seeing on a Facebook GLP-1 group.
Yeah.
Somebody, they had their syringe pulled up, and the question on the group was, "Is this the right amount?"
Oh fuck.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
And it's like, well, it depends on what the concentration of the peptide you have is, right? I mean, what's the strength per milliliter? So that's the kind of stuff that you go playing a little bit of a loaded gun there.
Yeah.
And as I said, never met a peptide I didn't like. I've written over 100 monographs on peptides. I chair the International Peptide Society. I'm a fan, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also realistic. Yeah, I'm all in.
Yeah. Well, let's get into like the world of peptides, because I think there's certain ones. GLP-1 that's the one that everyone talks about, right? And I think there's BCP 157 people talk about for injuries. There's Sumarelin, Ipmarelin for HGH, right? There's a couple of the ones that are popular, but what are, like, give us the wide array. Like, what are some of your favorite peptides?
Yeah, I mean, I love using Sumarelin with GLP-1s because it helps to maintain lean mass while they're losing weight and their skin doesn't get as crepey. So it's kind of cool when you start looking at how do I combine these things, right?
Yeah.
A little Frankensteinian, but it's cool.
A little. I like it.
It's cool. Yeah. I love Epitalon, and the reason I love that is that we live in this world of blue light, high stress, sympathetic dominance, right? We're basically on high alert. Our nervous system, people's heart rate variabilities aren't all that great, and their resting heart rate's not great, and they're not sleeping. That throws off what's called your suprachiasmatic nucleus of your brain, called the master-slave clock. It is. You got to try spelling that. I still have trouble.
I don't do public spelling.
Yeah. That's a good idea. But that master-slave clock is regulating all of your hormone signals that your brain is going to push out to the rest of your organs for the next 24 hours. And so when they did research on this, just giving it 10 days, every 6 months, it created a dramatic increase in survival in elderly people that already had pre-existing heart disease. The data was crazy different. And it makes sense to me because when we lose our circadian rhythm, I don't release testosterone when I'm supposed to, right? Morning, mid-afternoon. I don't release cortisol like I should. So instead of normally being high in the morning, low in the afternoon, lower in the evening, nothing at bedtime, up goes the melatonin. Now all of a sudden you got it backwards and you go to sleep and your brain's wide awake and you can't go to sleep. You have latency and you wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about work. Which is
that resonates,
right?
Yeah,
but it's that understanding that you've got all these things in rhythm. So I love Epitalon because of that, or epithalamin if you want to use the bioregulator. I love Kispeptin's another one. Kispeptin is a peptide that it basically works on your limbic system in your brain, so that subconscious part of your brain where the stress is coming in. But it's very powerful for helping men get their Leydig cells to wake back up, so they start making testosterone again. Maybe they've had too many head hits, or once again, stress is a big one. When your cortisol goes high, you stop making gonadotropin releasing hormone, and now your gonads are saying, hey, we don't need to make this testosterone. Why? We're under chronic fight or flight. Got to worry about survival. Why worry about procreation when you can, you got to survive, right? That's how your body works. And I love Kispeptin. I've seen it work for women, and women had trouble with conceiving, so really helping to re-regulate their cycles, and so that's fantastic. Great in terms of just mood, so that's really solid. And then the ones I love are the ones that heal the gut. There's so many people that have got gut permeability problems, food allergies, food sensitivities, and of course, the gut problems lead to autoimmune problems, which is rampant in our country right now.
Yep.
So I love, KPV. KPV is three little amino acids together makes up KPV. And KPV acts like a biologic. It shuts off tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF alpha, in your gut. It shuts it down, and it tells your cells that line your intestine, quit being so ticked off. Come on back, immune system. Let's re-regulate. I think that's a really neat peptide. I think it's going to become very popular, especially if they get it back on off of category 2. It's going to be very popular. Lorazepatide, another one. They developed that for celiac people. So people with celiac, their gut's permeable. They make a lot of something called zonulin in their gut, which breaks the tight junctions of your intestinal lining. And now the gliadin and gluten get in there. Their immune system hyperreacts, and now they get all inflamed and foggy-headed and fatigued. And the lorazepatide brings the tight junctions right back and shuts down the zonulin. So, I mean, what's cooler than that? You can seriously, like you. So think about it. You shut those back up. You turn off the inflammation. Then you put a little topper, little cherry on top.
Yeah.
BPC 157, which helps to rebuild the mucosal barrier. So now I've got this system of repair, right? And then I look at the immune system and think of thymosin alpha 1. Thymosin beta 4, everybody calls it TB 500, but the 500 is actually the dose. It's thymosin beta 4. Those likewise can be utilized in how do I start to rebuild and repair, right? So, there's a lot of cool ones. I mean, everybody's up on, SLUPP332 right now, right? It's like, sup, I'm gonna do that one, right? Because that one, helps, burn fat. Not a lot of human studies on that one yet, but you got a lot of people that are really in it, especially in the, what started all this was the bodybuilding community. Anyway,
of course,
right?
Of course. That's where all the good stuff starts.
The best chemists.
The guy in the locker room, slinging needles,
slinging it, exactly, right. Unfortunately, a lot of those guys are dying young, unfortunately, so I'm not quite sure on that. But the point being is, I think that there are so many peptides in different categories. When you look at the brain, for example,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, just brain health, like sparing the neuroinflammation, things like cerebrolysine or dihexa. I mean, there's literally not, because your body makes all these peptides, thousands of peptides to help create regulation, right? Whether it's for your skin, copper peptide, GHK, AHK, CU, right? For the hair, AHK is for the hair, GHK is for getting collagen in here. I mean, there's so many applications that I think if we get over our fear of, we need providers to step up and get educated in them and use them and be able to organize how you can track the results. One of the biggest, and I have to agree with this, one of the biggest criticisms was, well, there's not enough clinical studies on it. But you know what the FDA does accept? Real world evidence. So if you're in a clinic and you set your data up correctly, like age, gender, what the reason for giving it was, what was the dose, what was the outcome, that's real world evidence.
Okay. I didn't know that.
And you could submit that. So like I went. It was kind of funny. I came back there with my tail between my legs. Honestly, yeah, which is hard for me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I did. Because I mean, literally, you send in the slides you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And they've got experts. I mean, honestly, highly trained PhDs and MDs that have basically filleted your presentation, and they get to talk for about an hour, and then you get up for 2 minutes.
Oh.
And you're supposed to defend yourself, right? But I learned so much about what's expected. And now with the new administration, I think there'll be some favorable changes for peptides. I'm sure hoping, and the noise sounds like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I do think we still have to do our homework and collect data, make them safe, create a way that, that it fits. So it's not just the Wild West. Because I think it's a little bit of the Wild West right now, honestly.
It feels like it's wild, man. I didn't realize the depth of the worlds of peptides. Like I literally, like those four I named, those are like the only ones that I've known. Probably because of Joe Rogan.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. He's an authority.
Yeah. Whether we like it or not.
It's like, no, I'm just saying, but no, I mean, I've written, literally, I have 100 monographs with all of the full text research with the level of research. Like, is it in a rat?
Yeah.
Well, was it 3 gerbils in a guinea pig?
Yeah.
Was it human? Was it in a test tube? Was it a case study where you reported on it? Is it a clinical trial?
Yeah.
Is it a clinical trial on animals? Clinical trial on humans?
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah.
We did all that for for the Peptide Society. My staff, my personal staff, we put that together.
That's amazing.
And there's a lot of peptides out there that could do some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If people are following my same train of thought, it's like, why now? Like, why is this all coming now? If they're so prevalent and there's so many different forms and there's so many applications that are beneficial, and it's like, if you're not getting excited about listening to you talk about, like, I want to try that. Why would I not want to try that? Like, I want all those things, dude. Why is it now? Why is it now? Why hasn't it been around forever?
You have to understand, when I'm educating docs on it at International Peptide Society, we have our meetings at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, right? So we do our docs, and docs are just like that too. Like, I want to do that. I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
It'd be out of your mind not to say that.
Yeah, of course, because they got all these cool, outcomes. I think one, it's learning, which ones when.
Okay.
Right? Like, how do I use them? You think of it as like you're building a house. You buy an old house and you got to rebuild it. And there's a huge crack in the foundation, but you're convinced that it needs windows. Before the foundation, which is sinking, right? The slab is changing.
Yeah.
Probably don't want to put windows in yet. Maybe you should fix the foundation. And so there's peptides that you may want to apply for foundational. And I think why now is, I think COVID changed everything. I think post-COVID, people's appetite for information was big. I mean, obviously, I was probably using peptides for at least a decade. No peptide. What's a peptide?
Yeah.
Well, insulin's a peptide. We've been, using that since 1921.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, peptides have been around since 1921.
Right.
It's not, it's one of those things people don't understand. That, peptides have been a part of medicine, and you got there's probably 60, 70 drugs. I don't have exact number, but there's a lot of drugs out there that are peptides. But the point being of the why now is, one, I think the explosion, obviously social media has, everybody is on social media. They're on Instagram. They're, it's like, hey, want to look like me? Take this peptide, right? Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. And then there's great information that's out there. But I think it's because, look, people get frustrated when they're not feeling well. And I think I said post-COVID, I think people used to accept not feeling well. Like, hey, it's part of aging.
Right.
It's okay if I'm diabetic, I'm just taking my meds, or I'm hypertensive. And this is, I have no, political opinion about COVID. This is me just talking about it as a clinician. I own clinics. I educate, faculty at universities. Once COVID hit and people saw how frail they were, like people with diabetes, more of those kind of people died. People that were obese, more of those kind of people died.
Right.
People that were hypertensive and had heart disease, more of those people died.
Right.
I think that got people going, you know what? I need to do something about my health. And then that means, because I'm not getting an answer from my doctor's still kind of giving me the same stuff, I need to look in other areas. And I think that was part of the gestation, the flowering, the why peptides came in, because they are, my opinion is, they are a quicker way. I've worked on people for 42 years, okay? When I started looking at peptides, they just change people faster. So you get quicker results, more gratifying results. You help people get to the, kind of their balance point quicker. And that's wonderful.
It is.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But I do really believe that the why now is, I think it was a consumer-generated demand where the research has been there for a long time. There was an underground swell of this information and use, and then it surfaced.
Well, the consumer's demand for better health and wellness is undeniable, right?
Correct.
It's happening from the ground up, and it's going to trigger a lot of changes. I think how our healthcare is delivered, insurance
Yes.
models, like everyone's demanding something better.
That's right.
And this is probably a bad analogy, but it's what I use. It's like what was the unbundling of cable? Like people were tired of paying a ton of money for this shitty cable product, so then it unbundled, right? But now what's happening is now we're end up like we got 7 different subscriptions and probably paying more than I was for cable back in the time. But the point is like the consumer demanded it, and it was inevitable.
There was a time when it was great to have cable, because remember when you had that box and you just had a button?
Oh, the black
box.
box.
You could push the 72 channels. It made your decision so easy. Now it's like, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
What am I going to watch?
Yeah,
right?
I'm just going to read a book. Yeah.
But that is like healthcare.
Yeah.
It's the same thing now, but the unbundling is, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
I've heard about stem cells. I've heard about TPE. I've heard about EBU. What should I do hormones? Should I not?
Yeah.
So now all these choices are there. And I think, self-sovereignty is important. I think people should have the right, that's my body, as long as it's something that's not unsafe, right?
Well, they should know if it's unsafe.
Realize. Yeah, like getting into if there's a cobra, right here,
right.
I probably shouldn't agitate it and hope that I get bit.
Yeah.
Those are obvious things.
I would probably get bit. You'd probably be fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's to the point is like the consumer's demanding it, right?
That's it.
And the amount of knowledge that's accessible, whether it's good or bad, and podcasts have played a huge role.
Of course.
Right? Like tremendously big role.
Great podcast. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
Big role.
Yeah. And it's been really exciting. And I guess.
And then we got AI right now, which I think is in a very.
It seems to be the glue.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's going to be interesting how it evolves, because it's like, right now I look at it almost as if it's not managed well, it could kind of fold back on itself and people are going to trust it less because they can't vet the info. But I think there's enough impetus now to start creating really quality engines to vet your information. I think that's going to be incredibly important over the next decade. That's going to shape things more, in my opinion, than any other single thing that we do.
Well, and people who listen to this, I've used this quote so many times, but it stuck with me. It just blew my mind when ChatGPT released the announcement for their ChatGPT Health. And they cited a statistic that 230 million users weekly inquire about health-related issues. 230 million weekly. If that doesn't tell you, like, what are people doing? It's becoming the primary source of information. That's and even primary care in an interesting way.
Right.
And I talked to Rob Wolf. I'm sure you know Rob Wolf. And we talked about like how he created his own Grok doc and like how people are doing it. And then I was preparing for a panel today at the event where people were like, well, I don't know if I want to give my information and my data. So that's like a thing. So data security. But I think most people, at least I'm an idiot, so I just give it all to GPT and just hope for the best. I have the paid one, so hopefully it's not everywhere. But the whole point is like, this is happening, right? This is happening, and we're going to have to, industry is going to have to react, and they're going to want to leverage it because one of the beauties of a capitalist nature is that the cream will rise, right? So it's going to be a very interesting time. One last question for you, because I want to get this in this world of health span longevity. I think you use the term health span. That's your preferred term?
I like that. Yeah,
I do too. And for this industry that we're in, the fitness and wellness industry, and I know you're deeply in the Miura program at Lifetime. That's one of your babies, right? Why haven't we seen one tremendous brand come up to the top in the world of longevity and health span? Like, there's a lot of challenges to it, but like, I'm curious to get your thought. Where are the leaders going to be?
Well, I think, one of the reasons I went in with Lifetime was I thought they have a right to win in a certain segment of the population. They've always, tried to be at the front leading edge. They, believe in the healthy way of life, right? So I think longevity and health span mean different things to different people. So I think it's hard to be a single brand, maybe. So, some people wanted to be able to, travel until they're 85 and are going to be happy. And other people want to be able to, deadlift 600 pounds when they're 85, right? And there's different meanings to what health span can be. But for me, the baseline is we're just now really getting an understanding of how important managing your lab values are, much less any of the other things that surround successful health span. And a great example is fasting. And the Keck Center for Longevity, University of Southern California, they developed a program called Prolon, right? Fasting Mimic Diet Kit.
Yeah.
5-day kit. It mimics fasting, and it is really effective at changing the markers related to aging. And at the same time, we still get the difficulty of people going, I got to do that again. I got to do that again. Right? I think one of the brands is that I think there hasn't been trust yet. Like, who can I trust to give me good information that's actionable, and I'm going to be able to measure that? And by the way, how am I measuring my health span and longevity? I'm a big believer in the traditional labs like cortisol and advanced lipid panels and glucose and insulin and markers of inflammation, but we have all these new labs coming out that maybe or may not be validated. And so I just think we're not there yet.
Yeah,
that's all it is. I think we're just not there, and there's going to be somebody that's in the front that gets lucky. Right, they're in the right place, right time with the right message.
Yeah.
And there may be some other companies that may have even had a better mousetrap that didn't make it.
Well, what I've seen, and this is my observation, is that at least in this industry, we're looking for the business model first, but we haven't really solved for product, if that makes sense. Like, there's no mixture of like these things. Like, I'm sure, at Miura, you guys have a formula, like everyone gets their blood work, right? You do probably physical assessments and all kinds
100%.
of sleep assessments, right? So you're kind of doing this huge assessment phase, but that's what I would say is like the productization, but people always want to put the business model forward.
Right.
And we haven't got the product yet. Is that accurate?
I think that's really well. I mean, to be honest, I think we spent a year on what each step of the journey is going to be.
Yeah.
What is being measured? Why does it matter? What's the communication? And so therefore, when somebody goes through it, they get what they expected they were going to get.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Right? And, we've got a very high success rate, high retention rate. Results are fantastic, but I think it's, to your point, you're looking at the business case going, we got to get into longevity. Okay, but for your brand, what does that mean, and what are you going to offer?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, to steal Rob Wolf's words on this podcast too, he's like, we're kind of majoring in the minors most of the time, right? Because we still 90% of this is exercise, nutrition, sleep, right? The peptides are amazing, right? The hormone replacement is amazing. All the other cool stuff that we've been talking about here are all great, but still, and this is where gyms and health clubs deliver, is a fundamentally healthy lifestyle trumps just about everything. And we're still kind of there, but everything else is pretty fucking awesome.
I've been exercising now for 52 years, right? I remember age 13 I started, right?
Yeah.
And it's undeniably what you need. Now, what do we have to the beauty of it is now with wearables is are you recovered enough to train really hard? Because we have that old thing instilled in us of
keep
going
train harder.
hard. And I think even that we're in the minors.
Yeah.
But it's great that what gyms deliver on. You create belief, you create there's a social structure that kind of drives you forward, makes you eat better, makes you want to go to the gym and train, and creates motivation, which I think is incredible.
Yeah. Awesome. Last question, man. If you want people to, after they're done listening to this, go one place to follow you or check out something online, what's the one place you'd like them to go to?
The Real Jim LaValle on Instagram. It's got all my Miura posts, some ones that aren't. Everything that I'm doing. Yeah, Real Jim LaValle. It kind of it all meshes there.
That's fantastic, Jim. It's been an honor, man. Thank you so much for doing this, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it,
Jim LaValle.
Hey,
thank you, sir.
That's great.